Welcome back to MLive's Dungeon of Doom podcast. We are in Indianapolis for the NFL Combine all week. It is Thursday, February 26th. I'm Ben Raven. He is Kory Woods. Kory, how you doing?
Well, after just spilling my Celsius, I'm kind of mad. No, I'm good.
I know. I just watched you buy that downstairs. We're down in Indy. We've been down here since Monday night. We'll be down here through Saturday afternoon after the offensive linemen speak. Hey, it's beautiful. It's late February, and we just got reloaded with a whole bunch of Lions news and topics and all that. We spoke to Brad Holmes, Dan Campbell, and we got sit-down sessions with Kelvin Sheppard and new offensive coordinator Drew Petzing. But I think we should start with, I would say, the biggest news of the week. Taylor Decker is coming back for year 11 in Detroit. He dropped that news about 2 minutes before we talked to Drew Petzing.
Yeah, 2 minutes before we talked to Drew Petzing, and about 45 minutes after I posted the article that they were unsure of which way everything was going to happen. So, great for the Lions, Taylor Decker. I'm mad that you took up a little bit of my day. No, all jokes aside, that's a really good move. But I know you're about to elaborate on it real quickly.
Yeah, I mean, it's stability. I mean, I loved what Dan Campbell said before we knew that news, and it was one way or another, we're going to need someone over there. Obviously, Taylor, he's earned he's just like, I love Dak, but like, it's clear he's got some stuff to manage. And I mean, he was seriously considering retirement. So like, you're just waiting when, not if. And it's not going to be this year, at least. He's back. The starting left tackle is back. Answers a huge question. I think tackle still remains on the board in the first round, but I think this gives them even more flexibility. But it is really just kind of hard to forget Dan saying one way or another, we're going to need another tackle, not in the future, now. So whether that guy is playing as the sixth extra guy or just learning behind Decker and Sewell for a year to get ready for 2027, they need one. I mean, they absolutely need one, but that doesn't take anything away. I mean, Decker, longest tenure player on the team, an underrated pass blocker. And if he's healthy enough to go, I trust Taylor Decker that he's going to be able to be Taylor Decker.
And, Dan said all of the things that you would want to hear from him, and even especially the fan base, because, it's great to have Decker back. The fact that, you're going to have some continuity at that position, somebody that knows what the expectation is, that's good. Now, the question is the stability, because like Dan said, Decker has some things going on. There were times last season where he was not even practicing throughout the week. He was just suiting up for game day. And I just cannot get out of my head during at one point of the season, Dan said that Decker had diminishing returns in his shoulder. So the fact that he is still saying that left tackle is going to be a focus, that's good, because you're looking at two scenarios. You're either looking at this guy who's going to come in and be the new left tackle. He's going to be the left tackle for the future. So Decker is going to be there and should be able to be serving in somewhat of a mentorship role. And then the other fact of it is Decker's health has been up and down. So if in the event that he has to miss a game or two or three, this is somebody that has already been mentored and trained up and can go ahead and step in instead of just being thrown right into the fire. So I know that I've seen a lot of Lions fans talk about they should have released him because of the cap and everything like that. Hey, figuring out that cap is not your job. That's Brad Holmes' job. So don't even concern yourself with that. The main thing that is the positive is that they're gonna it's looking like they're gonna focus on the depth of that offensive line, and that's music.
Mm-hmm. And I think I was pretty real with everyone. I mean, I was in Chicago for that season finale. I was 2 feet from Decker's face when he was talking about everything and getting emotional and detailing the just wild hours at the facility between practice and meetings and at home, that what it took just to have him available for 14 starts last year. And as Dan said, that ain't going away. And I think I even gave it like 90% chance he's going to retire. So I'm surprised. I really, truly am surprised. But hey, that offseason must have got off to a good start. Decker said he needed to get away from football. He wasn't in a good mental space right now. He's at a point now where he was able to make his own call. And I mean, just hilarious timing. was I was sitting next to Jeremy Reisman of Pride of Detroit on the couch waiting for Petzing to come, and I saw Jeremy react to something. He was holding his phone out, and I thought it was a picture of Frank Ragnow, and I kind of was like, "Are you kidding me?" But then it was Decker, and it was like, "Okay, all right, that's a big get." But yeah, tackle remains a need. It just opens up the flexibility. It opens up the flexibility if they fall in love with a safety, if they fall in love with a versatile DB, if they fall in love with a pass rusher. I mean, it's been all pass rushers and offensive linemen and mocks. I did an offensive lineman. You did a pass rusher in our first mocks last week. We talked about that on Monday's episode before heading down here. Everything's on the table in those groups, but there is a really good chance to just find some starters. They've got some very fascinating needs. Yesterday was the first day we talked to prospects. We were back at it today with defensive backs and safeties. We'll talk more about some favorite quotes and favorite guys later in the episode. We're going to hammer through the Lions topics just because everything is so fresh. But yeah, the Decker stuff is fascinating. You mentioned fans, because I had a couple fans in my replies too, like, oh my God, they could have saved 10 plus million in cap space. Like, dude, they're going to find a way to make up that money. I mean, you saw what the Chiefs did with Patrick Mahomes earlier this month. The basic restructure created something like $30 to $40 million in instant cap space. Jared Goff's base salary is $55 million next year. The over the cap guys had the Lions as the second ranked highest team in terms of what they would be able to do with basic restructures. And Brad Holmes, he's open to it. He doesn't view it as a how do I want to say it? He doesn't view this as like a one stance topic. It's a year to year, case to case situation. I mean, the only thing you have to worry about is if you do that too much, you're going to run into nightmares down the road. New Orleans. So that's what you have to be cognizant of. But if you do it with the right guys, like if you do it with Goff, if you do it with Sewell, if you do it with St. Brown, like the pillars holding this franchise up, that's those guys that like, yeah, I will tie myself to them for the rest of that contract. I'm more than fine with that. That's a good thing. But it's on the table. I mean, free agency, we joked on Monday. I mean, we get home on Saturday evening, Saturday night probably. 2 days later, we're doing our free agency preview series. So it comes around the corner quick. I know it is wild. This is after the long start to the off season that we had and then going combine, free agency, holy crap, owners meetings. There's going to be some good stuff coming in the next month. It's going to be a meaty month. But they've got some flexibility, and Brad was just open. He's like, we've explored that. We're going to continue to discuss that. They're waiting on Graham Glasgow's decision. That could save, I forget what that was. I think it's at least $5 million in cap space if they walk away from him, or if he walks away. We'll see what happens there. There's been dialogue. They hope to have more clarity there before the start of the new league year, which is either March 12th. I believe it's March 12th. It's either March 11th or March 12th. So like I said, right around the frickin' corner. But the center topic, just since I said Glasgow's name, I don't know, man. Brad really seems convicted that he thinks Tate Ratledge is a real option at center. You and I were just talking about that on our walk back to the hotel to record. Hit me with your take, and I'll follow up because I feel pretty strongly about this.
My take is this. Tate Ratledge has performed well where he's at guard. That's where he's comfortable. Why not just go out and get a person that is a dedicated center who has played center at the college level and who understands the position? Tate Ratledge did not play a single snap of center at Georgia. So I just don't understand the fascination of taking a guy out of his comfort zone where he played well in his rookie year instead of just going out and grabbing either a center through the draft or grabbing, seeing what the free agent landscape looks like. I know there are a couple guys that Lions fans have their eyes on, even with the restructures, might be out of their price range to go get them with the other needs they have. So just go draft a center and figure it out, because even if Glasgow comes back, I don't think that you can pretty much bank on and sell that with him returning back in that position and just moving Ratledge out of a spot where he's already showcased improvement throughout the season. And it just doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, I mean, either they know something we don't know, or they just have a blind conviction in the fact that because Dan's mentioned it too. Dan wasn't asked about that, but Brad was, and Brad just said it's a real option. Tate is always going to be in the discussions for guard and center. So, I mean, I don't know, but we got to see it at some point. 0 snaps at center in the preseason, 0 snaps at center in the regular season, 0 snaps at center in 4 years at Georgia. Had 3, 4, or 5 days of training camp getting center snaps, and then it just went away because, as Brad said, Graham had played center before. Graham had played center before in Detroit. Graham had snapped to Jared Goff the ball before. They just felt more comfortable with that. So I don't know, man. The one thing I will say this, I would not move Tate Ratledge to center. I just wouldn't do it. I like you said, he was Tate's second. Tate after that week 1 game in Green Bay was just the Dan Campbell raising ramp up.
Yeah.
I mean, he just continued to get better. He continued to get more comfortable next to Sewell. He continued to look like a long-term starter in this league, just simply based on where he already is as a run blocking mauler. I mean, he's a mean guy, and there's something to be said about having Ratledge and Sewell on one side of the line together. I mean, run to the right. Run to the right.
Yeah.
Run to the right. But the one thing I will say that does entice me about the hypothetical thought process there is then you could take the Big Vega from Penn State in the first round. And then you've got a bona fide guard. And if you feel good about Mahogany, you feel good about, if you think that guy's a stud, take him, figure it out. Either he's competing with Mahogany and you're adding someone in free agency. I think Mahogany needs competition anyway. I've been real about that. I want to see a 3-way battle between a rookie, Mahogany, and Miles Frazier for that left guard spot. We'll see what happens at center and right guard with them still discussing Tate's things. And I know you mentioned some free agent names. Listen, I think Tyler Linderbaum's awesome too. I think he would instantly make this team better. I think he would instantly fill that need and make it a strength around the league. But let's just say this. Linderbaum's going to free agency. He already has reportedly received a market-setting offer from the Baltimore Ravens. So the bidding is starting at market setting. That is Creed Humphrey. Let's see my psycho sports brain. I think he's $72 million total, $18 million per year. So that's where that is starting. Brad Holmes' biggest free agent contract handed out was DJ Reed's 3-year, mid-$40 million deal last year. Just where they are, I mean, they have to do restructures. They're $9 million in the red right now in terms of cap space. I mean, they can create a crap ton of cap space in the coming weeks with those restructures we mentioned. But I mean, those are going to have to be coming hot and heavy. I mean, I every time my phone buzzes, I'm checking at it like, oh, is that Field Yates? Because Field Yates is pretty big on the restructure report. So I'm keeping my eyes out on that.
Yeah, it's got to come in the next couple of days because I mean, what the legal tampering period that starts on the 9th.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. That's right. That does start on the 9th. That's even quicker than I thought it was. So yeah, we'll see there. It's going to be interesting because Holmes wants to extend Campbell, Gibbs, Branch, Laporta, called those guys core guys. Obviously they want them. That's what they're about. That's what this whole thing has been about. Draft, develop, retain. And I liked what Brad said about retain. We're at the point now, retain means one thing. It means pay. And they've got to get cute with how they can pay those guys and external guys. So I really am fascinated by how these next couple of weeks go. I mean, covering Brad Holmes for his entire time here in Detroit, I think I've said this in recent episodes, I don't expect an aggressive splurge. But at the same time, listening to Dan Campbell on Tuesday was basically like a plea, like, get me some starters. I need help. Like, so
Tuesday was the progression in aggression of asking for more help because this started at the end of season press conference when Dan said, we got to get competition in here. Tuesday was just a more animated version because, it was understandable end of the season, somber, 9-8 finish, didn't make the playoffs. He was probably just in a ticked off mood. But now this was like, hey, get me some people to work with. No more projects. No more guys with checkered injury histories, and we don't know if they're going to be able to be ready by training camp.
I know, and it's the thing that's been kind of killing me this week is like, man, we obviously know what we think their top needs are right now, but like the David Montgomery situation, which we're going to talk about next, remains very weird. Alex Anzalone, I've said it before, I'll say it again. Detroit's defense is better with Alex Anzalone on it. He's one of the most underrated coverage linebackers. He's one of the most underrated linebackers around. He does not get enough credit for what he brings to that defense. Yes, they are set with Jack Campbell, but the beauty of that unit was how those pieces fit together and work together. So linebacker could be a need. Then you got Brandon Joseph's injury, so safety could be a need. You got Sam Laporta's back issues, so tight end depth could be a need. And then all of a sudden, the last time we heard from David Montgomery was Super Bowl week. He sounded pretty psyched about Drew Petzing. We asked Brad, like, hey, with Petzing running the ball a lot and having a lot of success running the ball, are you excited to potentially fix this David Montgomery situation all the way and bring him back next year? And what did he say, Kory?
I have to go. It was just really weird. I'm going to pull it up verbatim because it threw me off. And just to your point, when David Montgomery spoke during the Super Bowl media week, he said him and Petzing had a conversation. He didn't talk about like, oh, we got to work things out. He said, I'm excited to be able to go ahead and get to work with him and everything like that. Dan Campbell sounded enthused, Drew Petzing sounded enthused, but when it came to Brad, here's what Brad said verbatim. I've been in touch with David's agent and his representation. Obviously, look, we love David. He's a great player. We would love to have him. Kind of what to put last year in the rear view and just move forward. But a player has to want to be at a certain place as well. So those conversations are still fluid. We're just kind of seeing how it goes. And then when asked about what Montgomery and his agent told him, Holmes said that he preferred to keep it private and said, I will say that I've had healthy dialogue with David at the end of the year, and I've had healthy dialogue with his agent. So I mean, it didn't carry the same enthusiasm for a future together that Montgomery, Petzing, and even Campbell expressed in recent weeks.
And I think the Anzalone and Montgomery situation speak to one thing that my mind keeps going to. This is going to be an interesting evolution in the 50-50 culture of collaboration between Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell, because this is just me, my gut feeling. Maybe not gut feeling, maybe it's just based on being around the Lions nearly every day of my life. Alex Anzalone feel like Dan Campbell guys, 100,000% he wants them there. Brad Holmes, the general manager, thinking about how to put his roster together, is thinking this could free up some flexibility. We could get younger. We could do this. We could do that. Where Dan's like, I need my guys. I need David Montgomery. That's an NFL high-level caliber player. I need Alex Anzalone. That's a starting linebacker, 4- or 5-time team captain here. So very curious to see what happens there. The David Montgomery thing, a couple of weeks ago, my gut feeling switched to, all right, they're going to run this back. They got to run this back. They got Drew Petzing. Like, this would be great. But, like, hey, we saw it happen. They traded Swift a couple years ago when they had 2 running backs. They found out a way to do it there. Brad Holmes has done it before. Maybe he can do it again. I don't know, because then all of a sudden with Montgomery's weird situation, just that line just really stuck with all of us when we were walking away. He's got to want to be here too. Like, dang. Like, are they about to create another need? Because we still don't know what Sion Vaki, the running back, is, just because he had such a banged up year last year. Great special teamer, but like, what the heck is he as a running back? So all of a sudden, you're just creating depth needs while you need starters to fill in some gaps for other injuries and other outgoing players. So we knew this was a crucial offseason, but this is a crucial capital K, just kidding, capital C offseason.
It's just weird. That line was really weird because, again, when you go back to what David Montgomery said during the Super Bowl media week, it didn't say anything about like, oh, we have to get the future together or anything like that. It just sounded like, hey, he's optimistic. I mean, here's the quote from let me see if I can get that quote from Montgomery up, because it just threw me off the way that I can't pull it up. I gotta log back in. Oh well.
No,
Basically,
you're right.
he was just saying that, the talks have been great, and I'm looking forward to the future together. He talked about how good his relationship is with Jahmyr Gibbs, and he didn't even bring up an inkling of about, oh, we got to see where things stand, or we got to see how the contracts or whatever work out. It was a guy that was ready to be back in tow. So I mean, I don't know.
The comment from Holmes on Tuesday about he's got to want to be here too kind of ties into my point about Anzalone and Montgomery because it kind of reminded me, not as harshly, but when Holmes went on the radio, 97 won the ticket during Anzalone's contract dispute and dropped that he's getting a little long in the tooth line. And I'm just like, man, you can. I just wouldn't.
Wouldn't say
for an
that.
organization who is kind of so close, like tight knit, like keeping everything in house as much as humanly possible. I was like, dang, that line carries some weight coming from you. So that just kind of reminded me of that. Some big decisions to make. I'm sorry. I know they need help elsewhere, but like, do not create a need at linebacker. Sure, running back, you've got Jahmyr Gibbs, but the beauty of that offense has been able to work those guys in and out and the different things they do and how they complement each other and how they keep each other fresh, how one can handle a drive or not.
Got the Montgomery quote up. Here's what Montgomery said about his, first conversation with Petzing. He was very intentional about what messages he was getting across. He wanted to reassure me, to let me know that he wants me to be a part of it. And yeah, I'm excited to see what's next and see what happens now. But yeah, I think he's a great fit for it.
Yeah, exactly. So, oh yeah, life's about to get busy in the next couple of weeks. Yep. So there's a lot of decisions coming. Let's
and I'm wondering,
one more.
Just
Yeah,
real
go
quick,
ahead.
just wondering, what does the David Montgomery trade market look like at this point? That's going to be
No,
really interesting
I
if
mean,
if it gets to that.
yeah. Here's the thing. This is not even a slight against David Montgomery. This is more of a slight against the NFL. That market's not going to be sexy. It's not even going to be as sexy as DeAndre Swift's market a couple years ago. Because yeah, that's kind of why I was like, fix this, figure this out. I just you can't keep doing. Yeah, I don't know, man. Well, let's hit on a couple more Holmes and Campbell topics before we got to talk about Petzing, our first face to face with him, and obviously a little update from Kelvin Sheppard. We know Shep, he's back, but Shep's entertaining. I love Shep. I love talking to Shep. He's all energy. He reminds me of just like the feeling of playing football and just imagining being in a room with someone like that. But we got to touch on Brian Branch and Kirby Joseph. Just quick updates there. It's more TBD on Brian Branch just because it was an Achilles injury suffered in December. But there's just so much unknown there. There's so much unknown about that timeline. Like everyone's different. Obviously, he's a younger guy, so he's going to have a chance to bounce back quicker than others. But huge question mark there. And I don't know about you, but the Kirby Joseph thing sounded exactly like it did during the regular season, did it not?
Yeah, just sound like that. It's not going to end well. Hopefully we're wrong, and hopefully some doctor out there is right, and that they're able to get that knee as ready as possible for the new season. But it's just it doesn't sound promising, and this is why you're now probably hearing more and more whispers about safety, safety, safety.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I spent I spent some time with some tight ends today, but I spent some time with some safeties today. There was one I fell in love with, but just the Kirby stuff, it's just Dan Campbell basically said he's been in and out of the facility. Shep said the same too. He's working, he's rehabbing. Nobody wants to play more than Kirby. But right now, we're kind of getting to the point where, like, a month from now, we can start thinking about more things for him to do. What will this look like? How can we make sure this knee is strong? But it's just Branch is obviously just TBD to the nature of his injury. There's a lot of mystery around Joseph. I mean, all of us who were there in that locker room the day he spoke will have a hard time forgetting that, and that's why you hear so much uncertainty in our voices. But I also think Holmes sounded pretty uncertain too. I thought Campbell sounded uncertain. I thought Shep sounded uncertain too. I mean, the one thing they're certain on is that he's working his tail off trying to get back, but it's just crazy to think about how that defense fell off down the stretch. And I don't know. I feel like, I mean, Branch is not going to be ready for week one. I would be insanely impressed if he was ready for week one, or even like the first couple of weeks. I mean, you don't want to mess around with Achilles. You want to make sure he's Brian Branch. But the Kirby stuff, I don't know. I really don't know. Like, we're not going to know until he steps onto a football field like he did a couple times down the stretch and tried it out, shut down again, tried it out, shut down again. It's a need, man. They need something. They need something for that defense, period. They need defensive backup. They need a slot help if they don't re-sign Robertson. They might need cornerback depth if Rock Ya-Sin goes elsewhere. I would love to see Rock Ya-Sin back. We'll see what happens with Robertson, but like, and then you don't have Branch either, so there's a giant hole in the slot. Is this a defense really equipped to live in base defense like they did last year if they don't have Alex Anzalone? I don't know. I was falling in love with Emmanuel McNeil Warren from Toledo before we came down here this week, and then I spoke with him. Like he's probably going to be a first round pick. He is big. He's listed between 6'2", 6'3", 200, 210 pounds. Playmaker, 9 forced fumbles, 5 interceptions, 13 pass deflections, 11 tackles for loss during his career at Toledo, stuck it out at Toledo, played with Quinwan Mitchell, is one of 3 Toledo Rocket defensive backs here at the NFL Combine. So they ain't messing around down there in Toledo. And he gave me my favorite quote that I've had through the first 2 days of prospect interviews. And it was asking him about his physicality. And it was just unbelievable. I already thought he was a fit anyway, but then he drops this line. I literally just wrote about it at mlive.com/lions. And it's got to ask, why do you love being physical? What is it about it? And he said, when I'm on the field, I can let all my anger out. You bleed just how I bleed. We're both human, so we're going to bleed together.
And I retweeted that reshared that on X, and I gave you the Dan Campbell meme with the point because I'm like, yep, that's a Dan Campbell guy. off that quote alone.
He plays in the box. Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. He plays in the box. He plays deep. He's got experience in the slot. He's a freak, just size-wise, playmaker. Yes, he was in the MAC, but man, he's something to watch. I don't know if 17's the right spot there. Obviously, that might be a little trade back, but if you fall in love with him, I got no problem with that because there is a chance you're going to need a starting safety for TBD amount of time next season. It's just a weird situation. And it's a weird situation with the tight ends too, just because you don't know how Laporte is going to bounce back from the back surgery. Brock Wright's got another year left on his deal. They need some tight end depth for now, for the future. It's just crazy how fast this happened. That is the NFL. It's just, I think it was Wink Martindale, or maybe it wasn't Wink Martindale, but I just remember not for long. And it just makes me think of like just how things have changed. Like I still have very, very high expectations for these Lions. That's not going to change as long as Dan Campbell and those core players and Brad Holmes are here. It's just going to be fascinating to see how they adjust. You built a contender. You built a team with these expectations. How do you foster that to grow while also maintaining where you're at? So especially while dealing with just continued injuries, serious injuries, veterans leaving, people needing new deals, extensions. They've already handed out nearly $1 billion in extensions. They got more coming. So it's just going to be fascinating, the evolution. It's just such an important offseason. And with the needs on the offensive line, the needs for a pass rusher, the safety questions, the tight end questions, the potential linebacker questions, the potential RB2 questions, which obviously isn't as pressing as some of those other ones, but it's still there. So I just going to be very fascinated to see how Brad adjusts, how his relationship with Dan adjusts, and how they work together to bring this together. Because, I mean, that was one of the things Drew Petzing really made sure to say. He's like, you always hear about Detroit, and it's this buzzword collaboration. He's like, I get here, and I know I'm bouncing around a little, but this goes with the topic. And he's just like, that collaboration is not just a buzzword. That is everything that this staff, this front office is about. So, you guys are in good hands, but the pressure is on. I mean, that is why I wrote and I had to explain it, like the honeymoon phase is over. The honeymoon phase is just when everything is great and you can't do anything wrong. That's not me saying there's any hot seats or anything, but that's why I wrote that after the season. It's like the pressure is on. You cannot just keep doing what you've been doing. Like you're going to have to get cute with the cap because you're spending more than ever internally, and you've got these needs that you might have to dip externally that rookies can't solve. Because I know we did a draft call with Daniel Jeremiah last week, and it's like there's some potentially good centers in this draft, but there's not one with nearly a first-round grade. So it's just Brad's gonna really have to show some versatility and the ability to adapt just to the situation. And I think that's what fans are really focused on, is like, all right, you got us here. How do you adapt with this different window and different level of expectations?
I mean, that's exactly where I'm at. Last night I was talking with Anthony Bellino and Lomas Brown on Sports Rap on WJR, and they're two great guys, and they were just asking me about the pressure on Brad and Dan heading into this season. And I said, well, I mean, the Lions, the expectations are not going to change. But I said, if I had to pick who the pressure is more on, I believe the pressure is more on Brad Holmes more than anybody because Dan can only coach with what he has. And what he has had in recent seasons has, I mean, good look, we know how talented the offensive side of the ball is when they're fully healthy. We know how talented the defense can be when some of the core players are healthy. But when you look at the depth overall and on this team, it's just not enough. For the past couple of years, specifically on defense, they've been having to go poach players off of other teams' practice squads. And this is a point that you brought it up earlier that you drove home. Christian Mahogany basically got that starting job unchecked without any real competition. And it's one thing to be able to retain your guys and want to give them a shot, but it's another thing when you're doing that, but you're also not doing what you need to do to bring more talent onto the roster. You're drafting project picks. You're drafting and signing guys that have a checkered injury history, and you're still talking about this window. Well, if you're in this window, you need to get players that are ready to play now that you can rely on. Not to throw these guys under a bus, but Levi's had some injuries to deal with. Josh has had some things that he's been dealing with. Marcus Davenport has had some things that he's been dealing with. Rakestraw, you drafted him, didn't really expect all that, but he's had some things. Can you really count on those guys going into the 2026 season? No. So I think that it's going to be on Brad to be able to bring in the talent for them to compete right now. Because if he does not do his job as far as bringing in more talent, as far as depth that they can rotate in when they need to, I'm not going to sit up here and say that the it's going to be a hot seat on Brad, but I can't sit up here and say that people will be wrong for asking about it or because again, you said it. The honeymoon phase is over. You went back to back seasons as division champions. First year, when your first playoff run under Campbell, lightning in the bottle, probably should have take that back. Probably should have gotten that done, but hey, neither here nor there. Next year, 15-2 was lightning in the bottle. Couldn't capitalize on it, but we know why. The injuries. Last year was a step back that nobody expected. So now, how are you going to follow this up? This is where I say right now, out of people like to put these labels on things. I say that this is the most important offseason for Brad Holmes as general manager because this offseason to me is going to showcase which direction the Lions are going on. Either they're going to be a consistent playoff team or one of those consistent teams that you can count on, or they're about to start slowly regressing. And if they have another year where they don't make the playoffs or they do not look like let's just say a good to elite team, there are going to be questions, and rightfully so.
Yeah, and I just think about the end of year comments. Just Campbell, we need competition. We need more competition because I just think about guys like Mahogany. I know I've mentioned him a lot, but like that is someone Dan and Brad believed in, gave him a starting role, but like you get competition for him. Like I know it's coach speak. I know this is like something everyone says, but competition can result in success. It can lead to better results. It can push you to that next level. It can be a wake up call. And that's not just for Mahogany, but I think he's the best example. Yeah, before we move on to the coordinators, you mentioned a couple of guys that made me think. We asked Brad about Levi Onwuzurike and Josh Paschal because their contracts told due to that CBA provision that they got hurt at a certain time in the offseason, the final year of the deal. Levi, he's back. Josh Paschal, Brad kind of said, we got some things to work out there. Question mark there. We'll see what happens there. But Levi has proven to be an impactful player when healthy. I know he's missed 2 full seasons, but he is a great inside-outside guy. He is very strong and has been disruptive as a big defensive end. Josh Paschal has not been as advertised, and he's had just up and down injury rides too. So I think they're probably exercising some caution there. But let's move on to the coordinators. I just wanted to touch on that. Hit all the core topics from Holmes and Campbell. We'll talk about Drew Petzing. That's probably what a lot of you have been waiting for. It was the first one-on-one sit down with him. I was right next to him. Let me just say this. He's excited. He's enthusiastic. He loves ball. I mean, right? Like he just, even if he didn't say, and when I say this, I mean like he didn't go too deep on anything, like didn't give us a ton, but his enthusiasm, how quick he talks when he gets going. I mean, very personable, easy to talk to guy. And Dan said he just fell in love with him. I mean, he's like, after 20 minutes in that interview, and we will play what Dan said after you respond here. After 20 minutes of that interview, I knew he was the right fit. What was your takeaways just from that first sit down with Petzing? Just the guy before we discuss a couple of things he said.
Well, I mean, I didn't really know too much about him when the Lions hired him. This is going to be quite honest. I mean, we covered the Lions. I don't cover the Arizona Cardinals, so I didn't know too much.
Yeah,
I didn't know,
true.
I didn't know too much about the guy. And we learned more about him afterwards. Like, okay, this could work.
Yeah.
Then you have the conversation with him. It's like, now I see why they got him. This guy he comes off as a guy that lives and breathes football. He just has like he just has like a love of the game. And as you said, he didn't give away too much, but he talked in a way where you knew he knew what he was talking about as far as how he envisioned using players, as far as how he envisioned the relationship with Goff, with Sam Laporta, and then with the offensive line. So I came away more impressed with the sit down we had with him from some of the things I looked at when I was watching, YouTube interviews and reading previous stuff on him, because his time in Arizona wasn't great, but a lot of that, I would say a vast majority of that was not to his own, not his fault. It was the situation he was dealt with. So I think that him coming here with this coaching staff, with this personnel, I personally believe is going to work, especially if they get that offensive line situation figured out. They get that figured out, I believe that this is going to be the guy.
Yeah, then that's I agree. I just, and every reporter friend I've talked to at the Combine is like, what was the fan reaction to Petzing hire? Why'd they freak out? And I was like, well, listen, nobody here knew much about Drew Petzing, talking about the fan perspective. And
yeah,
I'm sorry, when you are coming from the Arizona Cardinals, when they clean their coaching staff out and you get hired by the Lions, which is a step up in promotion, it raises eyebrows. Like, I get it. Like, I understood that. But I also respected how fans warmed up to it when they started looking at it, when they started looking at the injuries in Arizona this year, when they started looking at the success he had the first 2 seasons in Arizona, specifically running the ball. And before we play that Dan clip on Petzing, the biggest thing Petzing said, and it was my question, not patting myself on my own back, but it was just based on Dan talking. Like, I know the Cardinals ran more jumbo heavy personnel than anyone in the league the last 3 years. That was more of Arizona's roster situation and injury situation. That is not who we're going to be and live by, but it does add versatility. And when I asked Petzing about that, he's just like, listen, man, you got to look at football like this. You want your best 11 players on the field. Find out what works best for them. Find out what works best for the team. Find out what style you have to go. And I just think that versatility word came up a lot. And I just think the jumbo personnel, especially after seeing what McVay and the Rams did this last year, leaning into it, like, it does just add a little versatility. And I think that is good for a team that wants to play the way the Lions want to play. They have the weapons to spread you out. They're hoping to regain the pieces to be able to pound you in the face too. But I wanted to play Dan's quick. It wasn't a long clip here, but just Dan talking about Drew Petzing, that 20-minute quote, and just why he felt he was the right fit for them despite all the other names they heard. So here's Dan Campbell on Tuesday from the Combine.
Drew was fortunate to find him. I've always liked Drew from afar, facing those guys, but then just watching common opponents. Through the years, what he was able to do offensively, I always liked it. There was creativity to it. Certainly they've used a lot of heavy sets lately, but that's where the roster has gone. That's not something that I foresee us being. We're going to be versatile, but he gives us that ability to make the most of what we have. And I just think he understands the protections, he understands the run game, he understands the pass game, certainly, quarterback play. So I think he's got it all. He's coached receivers, coached tight ends, coached quarterbacks, and I think that's important. It was important for this one. We had, a lot of different guys to interview. It was great. The process was great. A lot of good men, good coaches, great coaches, really. But he was the right fit. It was. I felt that within 20 minutes. So. It was really good. So fired up to have him.
And yeah, that's pretty much what we got from Petzing. Personable. I like it. I liked what he said about Goff. I'll let you do that because you wrote that one too. Because he just got asked about, like, man, you're taking over on a team with the weapons and some of the pieces like the Sewells, the Laportas, the St. Browns, the Williams, the Gibbs. Oh, and this 10-year veteran starting quarterback, former top pick, who's made it to a Super Bowl, who took the Lions to a title game, who has continued to get better and more comfortable and just become the guy, like, for Detroit for the now and the future. And it's like having another coach on the field.
Yeah, that's what I was just pulling that quote up right now. But just real quick, one thing that I did like that I heard from Dan Campbell about Drew Petzing was, remember, at the end of the season, they just kept talking about the attention to detail, but Dan said something that really raised my eyebrows, and he said that Drew Petzing understands the protections. That, to me, was just like, okay, I knew that. I mean, of course, that has to be a big piece, but it's the fact that he acknowledged it like that. I'm like, okay, this is we now see why they went in this direction. But to your point, Drew Petzing had some really great things to say about Jared Goff, and he said this was one of the reasons that he took the job. And he says that when he kind of perked up when talking about him. So here's what he said, describing how much he values working with the quarterback that he highly regards like Goff immensely. I think that's one of the biggest draws of the job, the opportunity to work with him day in and day out. And I said this, I can't remember to who, but he's very much like having an extra coach on the staff, just in terms of how much he's seen, the way he thinks about the game, and how hard he works at it.
I mean, seriously, you're going from Kyler Murray in the weird 3 years it's been to Jared Goff and the stellar 3 years. I mean, just the year he had last year, another offensive coordinator switch, the offensive line, getting sacked a career high times, and still was very good and not at all the problem. I answered a question about Goff in last week's weekly Roar newsletter. Sign up for that. We do that once a week. That's a good way to get content. We answer questions of the week and cover stuff like that. And it's just like, this team can win a Super Bowl with Jared Goff, guys. He wasn't the problem. And just having a coach, I mean, that just makes it such an enticing job. And I think Petzing told Tim Twentyman of the Detroit Lions website in their little one-on-one after we talked, just like, this was a no-brainer job to take. Like, obviously it was a no-brainer job to take, but like this, it's just, you guys need a reminder. Just even after the season it had, this is such an enticing situation, especially on the offensive side of the ball. And with that segue, we're going to get out of here with a little Kelvin Sheppard talk. Shep. High energy, passion, love for his players. Still doing that thing where he like wants us to forget big plays and look at the picture without the big plays a little too much. Listen, I think Shep is a rising young coach. I really still believe that. I think he is a very smart coach. I think he's just going to continue to get better and better as this thing continues to go on. I really do believe that. I've spent a lot of time around him. I've heard from players on him, but he's got to stop doing that. But he's just got to stop doing that a little. We talked about that in the season. It was just like, oh, if you take away these 3 40-yard plays, it looks pretty great. It's just like, no, don't do that. Just take ownership, take accountability, strive to be better, and move on. Don't blame it on the players. He doesn't do that as much as John Morton did, but just like, take Dan Campbell takes accountability for everything, and that should be a trickle down effect with everyone. And I'm not saying Shep's not accountable. He is, but just like, I mean, we can't help but laugh when we kind of hear that stuff. It's like, hey, I'd love to take away all my biggest mistakes too.
Hey, ignore that play. Don't look at that one. Yeah, who wouldn't want that? So I mean, but Shep is I obviously had to go write the Taylor Decker story, so I missed out on the fun of the Shep presser. So I had to let you take the lead on that one. But I mean, I think that Shep, I would like to see. Okay, you're never going to have all of your players 100% healthy, but I would like to see Shep have a year with a bit more depth and help than he had in his first year. And now that he has a year under his belt, I kind of want to see how he comes back in for year 2.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And Dan Campbell, I mean, we had the coaching staff announced earlier this week, a couple role changes, role tweaks, and stuff like that. But a defensive staff, they are running it back with that defensive staff. Like everybody's back. Kept Jim O'Neill from going to the New York Jets, give him the assistant head coach title, and Scotty Montgomery, who we just waved at in the lobby about 10 minutes ago, associate head coach title. But he just really spoke to the different levels of experience, backgrounds, and just feeling like that group is going to be great for Shep in year 2 as he continues to grow, as he continues to see things differently as a young rising defensive coordinator. And the main takeaway from Dan's comments on Shep were, with the offensive staff was still coming together and you're getting those guys up to speed before like going full in, Dan has been spending his time with the defense. Like he's been spending his time with the defense, going through cut-ups, going through everything with Shep. The one thing I love to hear about Shep was he circled out the 105 explosive plays by Detroit's definition, which is a 17-yard pass or a 12-yard rush. And just they got a board. It's 105 explosive plays from the season. They're marking player mistake, coach mistake, or something else. I forgot the third one, and just going through it and living and dying and seeing what they could have done differently, seeing how they could have coached it differently, seeing what a player could have done differently on those plays. And he said, I'm going to grind that all off season. I'm going to keep grinding it. And then when the players are getting in, I'm going to make them grind it too. So I loved hearing that. That feels, I mean, I could see Shep doing that on his own, but like just Dan talking about spending his time with the defense, just, you know, the offensive staff is getting their feet and getting used, getting moved here, getting everything figured out. So he was really able to dive in because that defensive staff is all back. It's all back. So they view that as a strength. I know people were like, holy crap, the way that defense finished down the stretch, you're really running it back. But this was a rare level of continuity for the staff as we've seen over the last 3 years. So there is some belief that, and Shep was super high on that too. And I do think that's great. I mean, Casey Rogers, Sean Deion Hamilton, very different backgrounds. Deion Hamilton, I covered as a player like 4 years ago. Casey Rogers has been doing it for a while. Get Deshae Townsend back to work with Terry Arnold and those guys, and just Shep's experience as a player and a linebacker. It's a good fit. It's a good fit.
Yeah, I'm with it.
Yeah. And the other Shep topics, the big ones were his interview in Miami. He said he was hearing from people that he was close to getting that thing. Like Jeff Hafley texted someone on the staff and said they were about to hire Kelvin, and just that he had been in communication with them for 2 weeks. Obviously, his interview got announced on the day that Hafley got hired in Miami. Shep is, both Miami and Shep were like, that was not a check the box interview. I felt it was real. I mean, he's like, I had people calling me from their front office for 3 weeks. So that's obviously going to draw red flags when you announce an interview and then hire somebody 2 hours later. So those were kind of questions that had to be asked, but he felt it was real, felt he grew from that. And then just the two players he touched on are just Terry and Arnold. He was joking around, stop talking so much and just focus. You know, he can be great. We're going to continue to work with him. He thinks Townsend is the best in the league at developing corners. And what we already knew remains the fact that this is Jack Campbell's defense, and he trusts Jack Campbell to make checks, to make changes at the line. And he said everyone in that locker room knows this is Jack Campbell's defense. So I'm curious to see what that extension looks like this offseason, because I think that's going to be coming for sure, probably based on where Holmes has done it in the past, probably around draft weekend once they figure out their free agents and all the restructured deals and stuff to figure out the money. But, yeah, it's not a whole ton of, just the main takeaways with Shep were just going through the 105 explosive plays they gave up, working with Dan Campbell. Like, they always work together. Dan's always involved. He said that he's been involved with the defense since the first day I got here, but just, he's like, I want that. I want to be coached too. I want to know what my head coach wants. I want to make his life easier. I want to take things off his plate. And I think this was a very smart move by Dan Campbell. And I think it's a very smart move for Kelvin Sheppard to be welcoming and opening to it, just to get on the same page early in the offseason with so many question marks on personnel on that defense, how they have to go after living in base defense last year. Can they play more nickel? Do they have a nickel? Who's going to be the nickel? Who's going to be the will linebacker? Who's starting opposite Aiden Hutchinson? So many questions that we're going to learn in the coming weeks. But I think we're going to get out of here because we're running long in the tooth, but we covered everything I kind of wanted to cover. Oh, just kidding. We've got to talk about some prospects. I know I talked about the safety, but I'm going to ask you who's been your favorite prospect to talk to, maybe a favorite prospect you had your eyes on coming into this week, and just give a couple reasons why before we get out of here, and I'll have a couple too.
Well, Keldrick Falk, he was just pretty interesting. I spoke with him yesterday. Man, I'm getting my days mixed up. Yeah, I spoke with him yesterday.
Dude, it's the combine. Yeah, I know. We've been here for 4 days. Yeah.
I thought he was pretty interesting. I think that I don't know if he's a ideal guy for the Lions just off of how much he still has to grow as a pass rusher. But I'm thinking that, like you said, the Lions could trade back. He's a guy that they like kind of trade back and able to get some more capital for, and they grab him like closer towards the end of the first round. I don't think that would be a bad move. Really excels as a pass rusher, but he excels as a run defender, but pass rush took a step back last season. But you see the promise is there because he has a great build. So I think he's somebody that they should keep an eye on. And I just thought the way that he talked was pretty. He was pretty so far one of my favorites. The Iowa guys, I don't see them being like early targets for the Lions. Xavier, I cannot pronounce his name. Nkwamba and Carson Sharper. Sorry if I butchered your names, guys. That's my fault. But those are two guys that played with Jack Campbell. They played with Jack Campbell and Sam Laporta. And, I wrote a story on the MLive.com. They both spoke about how Campbell, shaped the way they view the game and how they play during that 2022 season, and where Iowa's defense was basically the best thing about them because the offense was ranking near the bottom of the nation. So just hearing about those guys and Deontay Lawson,
Bama.
A guy that could land somewhere to the Lions, maybe on day 2 or day 3. He's spoken with the team. Sounds like he's ready to get back with his Bama boys. So maybe him, Terrion, J-Mo, and Jameer, they can run it back together. So those are some kind of fun guys to talk to.
Keldrick Falk, the Auburn defensive end, edge defender, is such a Lions fit on paper that I expect him to be the most mocked player to the Lions by the end of this thing when it's all said and done. I mean, the run stopping stuff, he's younger. People think he's got a high ceiling. He's physical, high motor, and he just measured in at 6 foot, nearly 6'6", 280 pounds. Huge arm length and wingspan. I mean, you got the intangibles, you got the traits. He looks like the kind of guy that they like to put on the other side of Hutchinson. In theory, just a big run-stopping pocket crusher who can create opportunities for him to come on the other side. But he is a big-time fit. I mentioned the Toledo safety. I'm kind of big time on him. Obviously, the offensive lineman I'm super high on. Spencer Fano's not going to be there, but he might be my favorite offensive line prospect in the draft. Love the big Vega guard from Penn State. Couple tight ends I really like too. I mean, hey, I don't know what's going to happen. I wouldn't expect the Lions to use a first-round pick or a high pick on a tight end, but man, Kenyon Sadiq out of Oregon would be fun. Just a freak athlete. Even if you're fully confident Sam Laporta will play at the early next season, that'd be fun. Drew Petzing has a lot of success with tight ends. Jared Goff is a play-action killer when he gets going. But I also like the Tanner Kazol out of Houston, big body tight end. When they asked who he kind of wants to be in the league, I mean, this is a guy that's got a huge catch radius, one of the most productive tight ends in the nation the last 2 years. Big body, 6'6" guy. He mentioned John Bates from the Washington Commanders, someone who rarely catches passes, who mauls guys in the running game, and has just found a role in the league. And I just kind of love to hear that. But there are so many avenues, especially with Decker coming back, the flexibility is it's out of the roof. But just wanted to mention a couple guys. We're going to be covering the combine wall to wall. We're here until Saturday afternoon because we got to get those offensive lineman interviews in on Saturday. Can't leave before that. Please keep up MLive.com/Lions for all our work. Please continue to use the Dungeon of Doom at MLive.com email address. We will, like I said, when we don't even do mailbags, I'll answer your question if we got a couple of them. Send us a written question and send us a recorded voice memo. We need questions for the newsletter anyway, too, so please use that 24/7. 365. I'm Ben Raven. He's Kory Woods. We're your MLive Detroit Lions beat, and we're going to give you a little sound bite from Drew Petzing on the way out. Jam-packed episode today, but fully worth it with a bunch of new topics. And we'll be back next week. We'll figure it out. We're going to be doing our free agent profiles. We'll still be doing stories we've got from the combine. We'll figure out our next mock draft plans. We got to go through a lot of stuff. It's coming. You guys have been waiting for this moment. There's fresh content coming for, it's back. Through the draft, we're back. I'm kind of excited. The combine kind of ignites me a little, like the NFL's high school reunion. It's a good week. But we're out of here. We're MLive's Dungeon of Doom podcast. Thank you for listening.
We want our best 11 on the field, and that can look a million different ways. And as you just talked about, that can change as the season goes, that can change as the offseason goes. And so being in that offense, great. Being in other offenses where we were more focused on different positions, I think has helped me and allowed me to go in any direction we need to go as the season progresses.